Today we're going to dive into the infinite world of Redux. And Redux is definitely my favorite audio effect, but it's so powerful when you group it with the right combination of other audio effects. So Redux is a total killer when you pair it with echo or with reverb, or if you feed just the right harmonics into it, you get these crazy textures. If you're seeing this video, chances are Subtronics just released my track Monkey Mind on his label, Cyclops Records. After he heard it, said that I'm one of the best producers out there, apparently. So I'll cut you a deal. If this video gets to 10,000 likes, I'll make the project for that track free for you to download. You'll get to see how I laid everything out. You'll get all of the sounds in that project for free. It's all going to be free. You just have to hit like so we can get to 10,000 likes. Or if the song is streamed 50,000 times, I'll make the project totally free for download. Definitely check out the track. Link is in the description, and then you can come back and comment. Let me know if he was tripping or if I'm actually pretty decent. I'd love to hear it. But yeah, if you want to say thank you, if you want to support this channel, just go stream my music. That's all I ask. Thank you so much for that. Add it to playlists if you think it'll fit there. And that's really it. So what we're going to start off with today is we're going to understand what Redux is, because Redux essentially allows you to control how much you degrade your audio. But when I heard that, I don't know, it just didn't make that much sense for me. So what really opened my eyes is whenever I had a sine wave, which if you can't hear it, it's a little low. It's like around 37 hertz, something like that. This got some high definition in the wave in the sense that it's nice and curvy. You know, kind of like how a circle doesn't have edges because there's an infinite amount of points that go around it, right? So as we're degrading the audio, I'm gonna go down here. You could use rate or bits. You can lower the bit depth. But as I degrade the bits, let's see what happens to the audio. So we're going down to 11, 10. Oh, I hear something. Let's check that. See, so there's little harmonics popping up already. Look at the waveform. You see how the waveform is starting to get a little more square wavy. It's losing definition. Look at that. So that's what Redux is. And right off the bat, you can hear we're getting some pretty insane sounds. So let's tweak things around and see what we can get. Also, just adding a few harmonics drastically changes the texture of the sound. So just to start off, this is literally just the beginning of the video. Like everything after this is going to be much cooler. But as you can see, Redux is wild. If you just give it a sine wave, the possibilities are endless. Here you'll see an amp, and amp is another, I'll make a whole video about amp. It's like another totally goated audio effect. But when we pair amp with operator and Redux, that in itself, super deadly combination. So let's mess with that. Let's see what we get. A big question here is, why do we need these sounds? Like, okay, this might sound cool, right? But what's the purpose of them? What you're seeing here are infinite bass hits. A bass hit is an initial impact sound at the beginning of your drop that kind of sets off your call and response. These could be used for bass fills. They could be your main bass, So really, you're not limited to just a bass hit, but I love to use really nice square saw wavy type of sounds and getting them to sound just right in the mix so that they just hit the listener. I think a great example would be this track I made just a few days ago. Here it is, and you'll see that right when the bass starts, there's just super nasty fat saw wave. So once again, you see that right here? It's this guy, kick, and then super nasty saw wave, followed by a little groovy bass fill. It's actually a snare with amp, which I'll show in another video, and then long wubby sound. So this is a pretty standard like bass track that you would hear, although it's super fat. I love it. But yeah, that's the idea. That's what bass hits are basically. Oh my God, yeah. It seems that when you have the shape really low and DC shift on with 3 bits and you turn on the amp, you get some crazy sounds. All right, so we have to move on because there's plenty more to do, but that's the idea. Now, what if instead of just a boring sine wave, we panned 2 sine waves, one to the left, one to the right. Both of their random here are 0. Random, if it's on, it basically starts the sine wave at a random part every time you hit a note. It starts at a new random section of the sine wave. And that's typically not a problem, but it can introduce phasing issues. So what I like to do is I set it to 0. The left panned sine wave is going to be at a 0 phase, and the other one's going to be at 90 degrees. And what that's going to do for us is it's going to give us a mono-compatible sine wave, essentially. You'll have a sine wave in the mids and a sine wave in the sides that don't collide with each other. They don't cancel each other out. So I've had people, I've done a whole video about this, and I've had people in the comments say, well, it's kind of limited. You can't do it with saw waves. Yes, that is true. But you don't need to, because if you feed tons of distortion to this, if you add more circles, you get tons of crazy sounds, and that's where the mono compatibility comes from. But now let's mess with Redux and let's see, because we had some cool sounds before. Let's see the big difference with this. Oh, totally forgot to mention, this note is just a D0. So if we take this note and we pitch it 1 octave higher, you can get different sounds that way as well. So here's D1, D0, totally different sound. So there's, between changing the notes and the octaves and the harmonic content, and then what you do inside of Redux, and lastly, the amp settings that you use, which I personally recommend lead and heavy, those alone are infinite what you can do. I highly recommend tweaking until you find a crazy sound and just using that. So now that we mess with that, we can move on to some cool bass fill ideas that we could have. One of them is if you just take this really fat sound that we have now and you pitch it up and down or just one way, you get these crazy, like kind of like morphy bass sounds. I turned on this LFO and adjusted the rate so that we get, you know, a nice sound that kind of like goes up and down in pitch. And we're going to mess with that and see what kind of textures we could get. All right, cool. So we've got our cool, sick bass fills here. Let's dive into this one a little bit. That's an insane sound. You could put that in between your basses and people are like, whoa. That sounds so cool, man. It's crazy, dude. Oh, damn. All right, dude, I gotta step out of it. I'll cut you a deal. If this video gets to 10,000 likes, I'll make the project for that track free for you to download. You'll get to see how I laid everything out. You'll get all of the sounds in that project for free. It's all going to be free. You just have to hit like so we can get to 10,000 likes. Or if the song is streamed 50,000 times, I'll make the project totally free for download. Definitely check out the track. Link is in the description, and then you can come back and comment. Let me know if you was tripping or if I'm actually pretty decent. I'd love to hear it. Moving on. You don't have to make your own sounds. Sometime the sounds that you have, like this little tiny wub sound here, you know, there's tons of sample packs, splice. You'll get sounds like this everywhere, but sometimes they just don't hit. They're not interesting enough, and you want to do something to it instead of reaching for saturation. How about you use some Redux? Here is just some Redux with some OTT after. Way more interesting. Adds all this texture. But I do find bits to be a lot easier and more harmonically in tune with the note and sounds that you're playing. Yo! Dude, these, like, I feel like I'm opening the portal to hell sometimes with these wave shapes. They're insane. Real quick, I do react, like, what drives this channel is literally likes and comments. So if you're liking a lot, if a video gets a lot of likes and people are in it talking a lot, then that makes me want to make more videos like that. So if there's something that really resonates with you and you really like a certain video, I highly recommend going in the comments, just be straight up like, hey man, I love this kind of content. You should do more of it. Now let's get into transitions. This is where we're going to start pairing Redux with echoes and reverb. And you guys have probably heard me talk about feedbackers before. A feedbacker is when you use an echo or a delay and you go down to this feedback section and you go over 100%. At 100%, you're essentially just creating a copy that continues forever. It doesn't die down. If you go to 99%, over time it'll start to die down. But if you start going to like 105 or 110%, then your sound is going to distort over time and morph. It's a very cool, trippy way to do a riser or to increase intensity in your track. So here's an example of that. We're going to take the wub from earlier and I'm going to add this echo. As you can see, it's actually at 95%. So we're not doing the feedbacker technique just yet. What we're doing is we have an echo, which is then going to be reverb. So without Redux, all we're hearing is this, which is already on its own. Very cool. Very nice way to create like a ambiance of sorts. But when we add Redux, towards the end of that echo, we can bring the rate down. That's going to create this like weird transition into the bass, you know, the main sound that I have here. So let's listen to it. Let's see what it does. That's kind of the idea. And you don't have to start, because I can hear that the rate is quite heavy at the beginning on the sound, right? So you can just take it off and slowly bring it in. A more refined and complex version of this would be to have a feedbacker. So I went a little crazy with this one. For a while I had this filter on where I would feedback only this section over and over. So only a section would distort over time. So adding this kind of filter drastically changes the output. But let's see what it sounds like without Redux. You hear it distort? It's going to keep distorting until... Dang. It's going to keep distorting. And you have to be careful with feedbackers. Like, you got to be able to reach your volume knob in your house, because if you can't turn it off, or if Ableton freezes, which has happened to me, you got your feedbacker on and then Ableton's like, hey, sorry, bro, but your project's just, you can't do anything to it right now. And this feedbacker is going to keep going. So you don't want to deal with that. Be close to your user interface. Be ready to turn down the volume, or like turn off the speakers if you have to. Yeah, what I like to do is I'll either add an automation on the on and off button for the echo or on the feedback. And once you stop your project, you can click where the automation is off and it'll stop the feedback. So here's an example. Even if I pause, it's still going. I'm freaking out, right? So if you click wherever the automation's turned off, it will finally stop. So just be careful with feedbackers. It'll get crazy. But now let's have some Redux happen. That's the idea behind feedbackers. I think that's a really cool way to use them. Highly recommend joining my music retreats. If you want to come learn from me in person, be surrounded by like-minded producers, and just overall have a great time. Eat some bomb food, nonstop bass music, and just learning and just chilling too, like whatever you want. I highly recommend it. It's in Crestline, California, and there's a Google form in the description. You can sign that, or you can just fill that out, and I'll reach out to you eventually whenever I have some rooms available. Here, my God. So I'm going to walk through what I did here, but essentially this is a way to get infinite robo sounds, which is yet again such a cool use of Redux. But it's only as powerful because we're pairing Redux with echo. So let's see what it sounds like. So we could go on forever with that. But essentially, the use behind this is bass fills. Exotics' bass fills are awesome. It's crazy. Like, some of the best tracks are just so slept on. Exotics released a track called Horror, and they got some awesome bass fills in there. You can use these crazy sounds and just sneak them in between your basses. Let's find a good example of that. So that's one of them. That's another one. You hear that? That sounds like a Redux transition to me. And I add a little like DJ scratch in there as well. Hey, it's post-editing ambition here. I feel like I could have explained this in a better, more concise way. So you can achieve this robotic effect by messing with two things. First of all, delay any sound. It doesn't matter what it is. And while the echo is occurring and the delay is happening, quickly move that delay knob. And that's how you will hear the sweeping effect occur. So that's the first part of the sound. The other part is very simple. You just turn on Redux, reduce the rate, reduce the bit depth, and it will add the robotic texture. The two LFOs at the end of the chain, one of them is just turning on and off the volume of the entire sound. And then the other is what is sweeping that delay knob and causing that big, sweeping sound every 2 seconds. And that's it. That was a good one. I feel like a bomb's gonna get set off with that one. It's only scratching the surface. That's what I like about this video. But I encourage you to go mess with Redux and come back to the comments section and let us know your discoveries. Lastly, if you want to thank me, make sure to leave a like so we can hit 10,000 likes so you can see what Monkey Mind, it's coming out September 19th. So it might be out, or you could be able to pre-save it. Either of those links are going to be in the description. Go stream it. And I encourage you to do that with every YouTuber. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that are teaching, but I've always find it to be a red flag for someone to be a teacher but have no music out. It's kind of like taking relationship advice from someone that's never been in a relationship. It doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to them, but I think it does impact how much you should listen to them. So go check out my music. That way, if you don't resonate with it, then you'll know that I make really trippy stuff and it might not be for you. And yeah, it's kind of a meme at this point, but go check out Lit Roosta. It's an awesome track. Cool. Until next time, peace.